Hi, I'm Dylan Sturgill.
I'm William Stocker.
And I'm Ricky Dringwell. And this is our video presentation over highway incident safety. Some of our credibility includes that we have a combined 8 years of firefighting experience with Whitehall Volunteer Fire Department, and also a combined of 10 years of education at Eastern Kentucky University. One of the reasons we chose highway incident safety is because at Whitehall we have 16 miles of interstate in our jurisdiction. We wanted to broaden our knowledge of the safety aspects while responding to these incidents. There have also been multiple LODDs that occur on highway incidents.
NIOSH Firefighter Fatality Investigation and Prevention Program produced leading recommendations for preventing firefighter fatalities 1998 to 2005, which provides numerous incident summaries and recommendations for highway incidents. Chapter 7, titled Personal Protective Equipment, describes an incident where a 48-year-old volunteer firefighter was killed after being struck by a truck while directing traffic. The report states the firefighter was wearing dark-colored clothes and failed to use a flashlight, red wand, or a reflective vest. When incidents occur, such as the incident just mentioned, emergency personnel must respond in a positive manner and determine what mistakes were made and how to prevent them in the future. A great start to improving roadway safety is for departments to create and implement SOPs.
SOPs, known as Standard Operating Procedures, and SOGs, known as Standard Operating Guidelines, are used throughout the fire service. Most fire departments are transitioning to SOGs. This is because SOGs have a little bit more leeway in the procedures compared to SOPs. In NFPA 1500, which is the standard for Fire Department Occupational Safety and Health program, in Chapter 8.7.2, it states, each fire department shall establish, implement, and enforce standard operating procedures regarding emergency operations for traffic incidents. A general example of a standard operating guideline for a highway incident would include a scope, a purpose, general, and procedures. The scope is for who this guideline applies to. This guideline applies to all firefighters on this fire department. The purpose of this guideline is to outline responses of apparatus to incidents on the highway or interstate system. The general section includes response to most incidents will be in conjunction with law enforcement, whether being state or local, as well as EMS. The primary responsibility is fire suppression, rescue, trapment of impatients, and incident mitigation. The secondary responsibility is traffic control for medium to long incidents, as well as assisting other agencies on scene. The procedures will include communications. Central communication will give as much information as possible. This information shall include the type of incident, as well as the location, direction of travel, traffic conditions, and any other pertinent information. If an apparatus is canceled en route, the apparatus should not stop at the scene unless redispatched to the scene. Command. The officer on the first due apparatus shall give an initial scene size-up and establish command. Then command shall conduct further investigation and determine what resources are needed and what actions should be conducted. As any responding apparatus, quote, over 26,000 pounds, shall not exceed either 68 miles per hour or the manufacturer's maximum reservice speed rating for the tires installed on the apparatus, whichever is lower. This is according to NFPA 1901. Upon entering the interstate, apparatus shall only respond with lights until traffic becomes congested to the point that lights and sirens are effective. First due in. As arriving on scene, the first apparatus, quote, shall ensure that traffic is controlled before addressing emergency operations, end quote, NFPA 1500. One person will be left at the apparatus, which will generally be the engineer. It will be his or her job to set up watch for traffic and set up warning devices until the second due apparatus arrives. Second due in. The second due in apparatus shall set up, quote, one or more of the following warning devices, which will be used to warn oncoming traffic of the emergency operations and hazards to members operating at the incident. Number 1. Fluorescent and retroreflective warning devices such as traffic cones. 2. Federal Highway Administration approved 48-inch by 48-inch reflective signs stating, quote, emergency scene ahead, end quote, with directional arrow overlay. 3. Illuminated warning devices such as highway flares. 4. Other warning devices appropriate to warn oncoming traffic of the emergency operations. End quote, NFPA 1500. Quote, apparatus shall be placed at an angle to the incident that maximizes safety, and blocking apparatus shall be placed at least 50 feet behind the first operating unit. Quote, apparatus shall be placed at an angle to the incident that maximizes safety, and blocking apparatus shall be placed at least 50 feet behind the first operating unit to create a safe working area, end quote, NFPA 1500. Training. If this is not possible, and firefighters are needed for traffic control, quote, they shall receive training that commensurate with their duties and in accordance with any applicable state and local laws and regulations, end quote, NFPA 1500.
NFPA 1500, Standard on Fire Department Occupational Safety and Health Program, Section 8.7 covers the standards that should take place on traffic incidents. Sections 8.7.3 through 8.7.9 state the following. Apparatus and warning devices shall be placed to take advantage of topography and weather conditions and to protect firefighters from traffic. Apparatus shall be placed to the rear of the incident or the emergency in a manner that reduces the chance of a vehicle being struck by oncoming traffic. When acting as a shield, apparatus warning lights shall remain on. All additional responding vehicles, when arriving on the scene, shall be positioned beyond the traffic barrier unless their function requires placement before the barrier. Apparatus shall be placed at an angle to the incident that maximizes safety. The blocking apparatus shall be placed at least 50 feet behind the first operating unit to create a safe working area. One or more of the following warning devices shall be used to warn oncoming traffic of the emergency operations and the hazards to members operating at the scene. 1. Fluorescent and retroreflective warning devices such as cones. 2. A Federal Highway Administration approved 48 by 48 inch retroreflective sign stating emergency scene ahead. 3. Illuminated warning devices such as highway flares. 4. Other warning devices appropriate to warn oncoming traffic of the emergency operations. Warning devices shall be placed and utilized with proper considerations given to visual obstruction such as hills, curves, blind spots, or unusual localized weather conditions such as fog or rain. The first arriving unit shall ensure traffic is controlled before addressing the emergency operations. Members shall position themselves and any victims in a secure area. Members shall park or stage any unneeded fire apparatus or personal vehicles off the roadway whenever possible. Proper apparatus placement. The apparatus operator of the first due apparatus has a critical decision to make when arriving on scene to ensure the apparatus is in the best position for scene safety, establishing a working zone, and to keep traffic flowing, if possible. Over time, as more resources arrive on scene, different zones will be established. These zones include the advanced warning zone, the transition zone, the buffer zone, the working zone, the loading zone, and finally the termination zone. Whether the apparatus is a pumper, a tender, or an EC unit, also known as an emergency care unit, there is a designated spot for each type of apparatus. Blocking apparatus. The first apparatus should block the incident in a funnel type fashion. The operator should park the apparatus at a 45-degree angle away from the incident with the wheels turned sharply in the same direction. This would prevent oncoming traffic to break into the scene and harm the personnel and victims. This apparatus should be an engine or pumper, or have engine or pumper capabilities in the event of a fire. The second due apparatus, that is a tender, engine, or ladder company, should park 50 feet behind the first due apparatus in the same fashion to create the buffer zone. Personnel of this apparatus should also create the advanced warning zone, the transition zone, if not needed for incident mitigation. For incidents that will have a longer duration, a loading zone and a termination zone should be created. An example for this type of incident would be a multiple vehicle collision. that has multiple entrapments and will have many patients that will need to be transported. EC units should be positioned in the loading zone downward from the incident, but still in the cold zone. Law enforcement units that are not directly involved with traffic control should also be positioned in the loading zone, but not in the way of egress of EC units. Directly after the loading zone would be the termination zone, which would transition to open all lanes of traffic. As mentioned prior, there are different zones that are established at a highway incident. Not every scene will require all zones. The zones required would depend upon the type of call and the duration of the call. In the drawn-out incident, the zones are labeled 1 through 6. Number 1 is the advance warning zone, in which 1 or 2 emergency scene ahead signs are placed. Number 2 is the transition zone, in which cones are used to begin to block lanes of traffic as needed to divert motorists to appropriate lanes. Number 3 is the buffer zone, in which the blocking apparatus is placed in a position to create a barrier between itself and the established working area. This zone is usually 50 feet. Number 4 is the working zone, in which personnel are actively engaged in fire suppression, patient extrication, and/or incident mitigation. Number 5 is the loading zone, in which EC units are staged for direct access to patients and have immediate access to egress. The loading zone shall be in the cold zone and away from any IDLH atmospheres. Law enforcement units that are not directly involved in traffic control shall also be staged here. Law enforcement units staged in the loading zone should not block EC units from egress. Number 6 is the termination zone, in which traffic is returning to normal operations. Scene notification. Notifying motorists of the possible dangers that lie ahead should warrant the drivers to slow down and be ready to respond as needed by personnel conducting traffic control. In addition to placing cones and using emergency warning lights, personnel should position signs that state emergency scene ahead in the advanced warning zone and just prior to the buffer zone. Although it is important for proper scene notification, it is vital that all personnel on scene to wear proper PPE throughout the duration of the incident.
To improve highway incident safety, proper personal protective equipment, commonly referred to using its abbreviation PPE, consists of turnout gear when working near heat, flame, and smoke. Although this section will focus closer on high visibility vests acceptable for highway incidents. High visibility vests design include background material, which consists of fluorescent colored base material intended to be highly visible. Retroreflective material, which is a band of material on apparel intended to reflect light back to the source. Combined performance material, which consists of a combination of retroreflective and fluorescent material that can be counted toward the minimum area requirements for background material. Class 2 and 3 vests are defined by American National Standards Institute and the International Safety Equipment Association 107 to 2004, American Standard for High Visibility Safety Apparel and Headwear. This slide shows a picture of Class 2 vests in Michigan and Washington. Here you can view a Class 3 high visibility vest to give you an idea of the design. Finally, this is a public safety vest, which will be discussed in further detail soon. Each of these 3 vests are acceptable to wear on the roadway, but fire departments are encouraged to follow any local and state standards. This table lists minimum area of visible material for all performance class and public safety vests. These measurements are defined in American National Standard for High Visibility Safety Apparel and Headwear, ANSI 107-2004, and American National Standard for High Visibility Public Safety Vests, ANSI 207-2006. A few codes, standards, and guidelines which introduce high visibility vests for emergency personnel on the roadway are American National Standard Institute and International Safety Equipment Association, titled American National Standard for High Visibility Safety Apparel and Headwear, and American National Standard for High Visibility Public Safety Vests. The 23rd Code of Federal Regulations, Part 634, titled Worker Visibility, National Fire Protection Association 1500, Chapter 8.7, titled Traffic Incidents, and finally, Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices, Part 6D.03. The American National Standard for High Visibility Safety Apparel and Headwear, ANSI 107-2004, specifies high visibility vest designs, amounts of materials, colors, and placement to increase worker visibility, and states vest classifications. The classes consist of Class 1, Class 2, Class 3, and Class E. As of November 24th, 2008, all emergency personnel and other personnel who are placed in such circumstances must follow the 23rd Code of Federal Regulations, Part 634, titled Worker Visibility. 634.2 states, high visibility safety apparel must meet Performance Class 2 or 3 requirements of ANSI 107-2004, American National Standard for High Visibility Safety Apparel and Headwear. 634.3 states all workers within the right-of-way of a federal aid highway who are exposed either to traffic, for example, vehicles using the highway for purpose of travel, or to construction equipment within the work area shall wear high visibility safety apparel. 634.3 continues stating firefighters or other emergency responders working within the right-of-way of a federal aid highway and engaged in emergency operations that directly expose them to flame, fire, heat, and or hazardous materials may wear retroreflective turnout gear that is specified and regulated by other organizations such as the National Fire Protection Association. The National Fire Protection Association's NFPA 1500, 2013 edition, Chapter 8.7.10 states, when members are operating at a traffic incident and their assignment places them in potential conflict with motor vehicle traffic, they shall wear a garment that is constructed with high visibility fluorescent and retroreflective material visible from all directions. In NFPA 1500's Appendix A.8.7.10 states, members that operate on roadway incidents should be provided with garments that ensure proper conspicuity enhancement consistent with the requirements in the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices, 2009 edition, titled Workers' Safety Considerations. Furthermore, in the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices, Part 6D.03, in paragraph 4, states all workers, including emergency responders within the right-of-way, shall wear high visibility safety apparel that meets the Performance Class 2 or 3 requirements of the ANSI 107-2004 publication, or equivalent revisions, and labeled as meeting ANSI 107-2004 standard performance for a Class 2 or 3 risk exposure, except as provided in paragraph 5. Where paragraph 5 states emergency and incident responders and law enforcement personnel may wear high visibility safety apparel that meets the performance requirements of the ANSI 207-2006 in lieu of ANSI 107-2004 apparel. The American National Standards Institute's Standard for High Visibility Public Safety Vests, ANSI 207-2006, provides a new standard on safety vests for emergency service personnel, including police officers, firefighters, EMS, and other public safety personnel in such instances. This new standard combines fluorescent and retroreflective materials to improve safety and visibility for emergency services. ANSI 207 includes design options for breakaway features much safer than zippers, buttons, or sewn seam. Breakaway public safety vests attach with Velcro along with a cutout design. The Velcro attached breakaway creates a safer design should it become caught on a passing vehicle. The cutout design provides easier access to equipment belts, radios. Lastly, the new standard introduces color-specific markings suggesting red represents fire personnel, blue representing law enforcement, and green representing emergency medical services. Now let us review the NIOSH case study from earlier. The volunteer was wearing dark-colored clothes while directing traffic in low light during early hours. He was not using a flashlight, red wand, or reflective vest, which was available within on-scene apparatuses. Also, the NIOSH report mentions a rescue crew on scene had traffic cones, flares, and turnout codes. We recommend fire departments create and implement SOPs for traffic incidents, follow highway recommended practices for parking on and blocking roads, inspect equipment and PPE daily to ensure proper function, practice safe traffic incident staging, ensure proper illumination for increased safety at incident scenes, and finally, ensure all members use an appropriate high visibility vest accepted by American National Standards Institution 107-2004, Class 2 or 3, or American National Standards Institution 207-2006, Public Safety Vest.